Keisha, just give me something that you can say, this is black culture and we proud of it. Let's put it in a museum. Remember MC Hammer? All these rappers hated MC Hammer, didn't curse. MC Hammer had songs about God. Like MC Hammer was like the model rapper, and they called him a sellout. MC Hammer took care of all of his friends and his family, everything he did good, and they said he was a sellout. So we see that, like Chad said, degeneracy is synonymous with what you would call black culture, because you see the things that are quote give black folks a good image or light, black folks reject.
Do you feel like I hate to throw all black, because it sounds like, we're like all black people, every part of black culture is bad,
Give me something. Keisha, just give me something that you can say, this is black culture and we proud of it. Let's put it in a museum.
Just let it go. Look, Blad. You said something one of your shows recently. You was like, man, ain't nobody finna put up with your mouth. He said, every time I say something, you always talk about, man, but what about this? And what about, you like, man, just stop. Like, ain't nobody, every time I say something, y'all talking about, but what about what they doing over here? That ain't all black people. It ain't all, just shut up. Ain't nobody finna put up with your mouth, man.
All right, y'all. Let's.
I was laughing so hard. I'm not saying
necessarily that it's black culture. I'm just saying, like, there are, for instance, okay, there are. Last time I looked, it was like 7,000 black men who had killed other black men. Right? Mm-hmm. There's 40 million black people, and even though, yes, that's a big number out of every group of people who have been, dealing with race on the same race crime. What I'm trying to say is, I think the media makes us think that all this group is doing one thing. And I was explaining this to my older daughter earlier today. So, I said, abortion is black women have a high rate of abortion, right? But there are millions upon millions of black women who are not having abortions. But if you look at who is having the abortions out of that statistic, yes, black women are having a lot of abortions. If you look at the black on black crime, yes, the black people, the numbers are high out of those people, but it's still a lot of black people who are not committing the crime. It's like a small group of people who are doing the most, and they get highlighted. And so one of the things that I've said, I said this like when I was on Dr. Phil, and I've said this for a long time, start telling the stories of black people who are not doing these things, because there are a lot of black people who are not they're not doing that. Most black people are not poor. 81% of black people are middle class, doing just pretty much what other people are doing. But it's always like, oh, black people are just so, we're just so downtrodden, and we can't do, and we can't think, and we can't vote, and we can't do anything. It's like, well, the vast majority of us are, we're going right
Keisha,
along.
You know what I would say to that, and you are right. Just as a point of fact, that statistically speaking, I mean, yes, we know that it is a small majority, but here is where the problem lies for me, because even though there aren't a ton of people out there, running wild and just sullying the black image, such as it is, if you were to ask just your typical straight-laced, hard work, probably never even got a parking ticket. If you spoke to them, if you talked to them, they excuse it. Mm-hmm. That's the problem. They are in line with them ideologically. They run cover for that. It's the psychology of it. They endorse. They endorse. They may not be out there doing it, but again, especially it's almost the sort of the sympathy and this kind of connection they feel as though they have with it. It seems as though it gets worse the more successful, the more you sort of climb the social ladder. You ask a black person, they are right in line with the lowest of the low in terms of the way they think and how they understand life and how they understand the world. And so to me, that's the larger problem, because the ones that are really making a few, it's not going to change until they, because they won't call it into question.
And thank you.
They protect it.
And thank you, Louisiana Sister Squad, for the super chat. I appreciate the truthful discord. Thank you, great panel. So I appreciate that. But yeah, Chuck is absolutely 100% correct. When you look at, and Larry Elder said something that I disagree with. It's actually on the YouTube, the Uncle Tom IG page. And I was asked to share this to my own IG, and I didn't because I disagree with it. But he said something to the effect of, when you look at the upward mobility of black folks during the time of Jim Crow, you saw this growth in literacy, this growth in entrepreneurship. You saw all these things, and these people weren't complaining. But today, now that the Civil Rights Act has been passed, now that this has been passed, that has been passed, we're not doing so well as black folks. And I get what he's saying, but at the same time, that kind of goes along with this narrative. Again, I live in a predominantly black town here in Texas. The median income here is well above poverty. In fact, most people who live here are middle class or upper middle class. There's a lot of wealthy blacks where I live. Most of them have great jobs. Most of the black people I know personally have really good paying jobs. Again, so you see, like when it comes down to the rubber hitting the road, many black people are actually doing well. And so this narrative that black people aren't doing well is just completely false. Again, there's this perception that black people aren't doing well because of the narrative that's being pushed. And so what we do is we mistake the narrative for reality. And to Chuck's point, because black folks who are doing well still feel that they are still the victims of oppression and systemic racism for no other reason than they've been indoctrinated to believe that, they can't see the fact that their struggles are the same as their white neighbors in terms of having bills to pay, in terms of kids that get sick, in terms of getting cut off in traffic. Literally, it's just a part of being a human. But again, black people have been conditioned to believe that to the extent that they have a day that doesn't go well, it's because of the color of their skin. And so we've been conditioned to believe that on the one hand, that critical race theory where that Quisha just brought up earlier, but we've also been conditioned to believe that we are one and the same with our lowest common denominator. We seek not to be like our best and brightest. We seek not to be like the ones among us who reject the oppression and the ones who are just taking life by the horns and just grabbing it and whatever. We seek not to be like them. We seek to identify instead with our lowest common denominator, who are projected in the mainstream media. The fatherless, thug, degenerate, gangster. These are the people that we promote and we edify in the media and say, this is the typical black man. When you look at Snoop Dogg, he grew up without a father. When you look at Puff Daddy, he grew up without a father. When you look at all these different, actors and not all of them, but when you look at many of them grew up without any kind of masculine structure in their lives. And they were picked. They were identified. And they decided to tap dance and to sing the song and to go along for the prestige, for the money, for the fame that goes along with it. And now they are the standard bearer for blackness. And rather than challenging that narrative, those of us who are black, who are middle class or upper middle class, those of us who did go to college and who do have our lives together and so on and so forth, We don't see the fact that, hey, I actually do have privilege. I actually am set up quite nicely. Instead of coming to that conclusion, we instead go along and believe the lies and the falsities and the narrative. And this is why we vote 90+% for a party that communicates to us, to Blanche's point, that to be black is to be oppressed. And we fall for the propaganda, hook, line, and sinker, over and over and over again, because there's a cognitive dissonance at play.
Yeah. I 100% agree. I look at it as being double-minded, because on one hand, it's the role, it's exactly what Roland Martin said. In his mind, he cannot even, he doesn't see that his life is like what he was taught, his values, is good for everyone. It's like, I'm going to take my life and I'm going to say, well, that's just me. But the other person over there, like, I have to, the other person, they can't really vote. This other black person, they can't really succeed. It is like, on one hand, you're living in your reality of having a 2-parent home, of having all of the things that have benefited you, for you to afford you a good life. But your neighbor, who literally, and he gave this example, my neighbor or somebody who lives on my same block, maybe they might not have the father, or maybe they might not have had the money that our family had, but somehow all of a sudden the value system, the principle that got you there, it changes. And all I'm saying is that the media is a huge fault at this thing, because and those typically elite black folks, many times those are the ones who are selling this story, who have never experienced any struggle, who have never experienced anything else. They don't understand that those principles that got them there are the same things that are needed for those other people. Instead, they do this, like, this pity party, and it's like a cognitive dissonance. Like, they don't understand that this is a principle thing. If you do X, you will get Y. It's like, no, well, my life is this, but it's a pity party, and it's like, it's good for me, but you need something different. And I'm just saying that, the reality is that, most black people are not struggling, but the story that is told is something totally different. And if we could connect with what's actually happening, I think that would actually change people's lives. That nobody wants to hear, nobody is inspired by the person who had everything growing up and they never had to struggle. People are inspired and lives are changed, when you accept Christ as your Lord and Savior. But that change that comes with that is struggle to victory. That's what inspires people, when you struggle and then you get to victory. Nobody wants to hear the story about, I never had to struggle, there was everything was always given to me. That's not an inspiring story. What is inspiring and what gets people to change is when you can overcome. And we don't allow people the opportunity to say, no, you can do better. It's like, no, you're oppressed and you need to go. And, it's not something that's within you pushing you to do better. It's something that you have to go and demand, that something outside of you gives you something better. It's not accurate, and it's not normal. It's not based in reality. None of it makes sense. It's not principle based. It's double-mindedness. It's literally double-mindedness, and a double-minded man is unstable in all of his ways, and it just creates this crazy cycle. Okay, I'm done.
I mean, that's why when I talk about this stuff, I talk about black culture, because it's not per se the people, it's the culture that they indulge in. So, for example, if 7,000 dogs were getting murdered every year, white folks would go ballistic. If 7,000 dogs were getting shot down in the streets, they would shut the country down. That's culture. There are actually 7,000+ black men getting killed every year, and nothing's getting shut down. People aren't walking on freeways, stopping the traffic. People aren't surrounding the White House. None of this stuff is happening. And it's literally, now it's going from young men getting killed to babies getting killed. Now the violence is spilling over to women. So what I'm saying is the problem with it is the culture. So once we glorify the culture in the music, once we glorify the culture in the media, once we glorify the culture in the movies, like once the culture is glorified, now it becomes reality. So when that governor in Oregon went at 1 a.m. to sign a bill that said that black and brown children don't have to have any criteria to graduate from high school, there should have been outrage among the people when it wasn't. Because guess what? It's okay for that because you're black and you're oppressed. So they can take away the standards for you. So when I talk about this stuff, I know the numbers. About 2% of the population, quote unquote, black men are causing all this havoc, just 2%. But that 2% is represented on a global scale as far as imagery, as far as marketing, as far as everything. So again, the average black person, just the average black person, I would say is just decent and hardworking and living their life. The problem is that's 2023. Let's give it 10 years. With all this social media, with all this propaganda, with all this media influence, what happens to the next generation? We're going to be okay. What about the child that's 5 years old now? Or the child that's 3 years old? They're going to be bombarded with this version of blackness that's not good. Think about Lizzo being a standard for a woman, Cardi B being a standard for a woman, a man being a standard for a woman. Like, so again, to me, it's not individuals and sort of say black people. To me, it's just the culture. And that same culture is growing, and not just growing with black folks, it's growing with everybody. If you go on TikTok, you can see all the races, like these women doing this, like this, I call it ratchet behavior. You see all the women doing it. White, Asian, Hispanic, black, they all doing the same twerk, ratchet, same thing. So this culture is spreading. And the culture actually lines up with this whole victim mentality. All this stuff to me ties up for their ultimate agenda. Is just to get everybody to be degenerates. And if everybody's degenerates, who's gonna fight?
I agree.